our Green Career session, and today we'll be focusing on careers and environmental policy in higher education. So just to kick us off, could we have all of our panelists introduce themselves and with a quick follow-up question, what is your current role in the environmental field?
How about let's do Joseph, Enrique, and Yvonne.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for inviting me here today. I'm Joseph Tumber-Dávila. I'm a professor at Dartmouth College, which is a research and university in New Hampshire, so about 3,000 miles away from where Canopy is right now. I study forest ecology, so my whole goal is to understand how forests are changing through time, and I get to do a lot of cool research on that. And I started with Canopy about 9 years ago when I was living in the Bay Area, so I'm excited to kind of be with you all virtually.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Enrique M. Rodriguez. I'm an associate construction analyst with the California Building Standards Commission for the state of California. First, I would like to thank Juanita and staff for giving me the opportunity to share my story and journey. A little bit about where I work. I work for the Building Standards Commission, and the Building Standards Commission is a state agency that administers a rulemaking process for California and works with other state agencies that have authority to create building codes for certain construction types. For example, there are state agencies that have authority for residential homes and apartments, public schools and community colleges, hospitals, and commercial buildings, state buildings, and universities. To put it simply, state agencies submit their code change proposals to our commission, and we review those documents to ensure that they follow the basic laws when crafting the codes, mainly to ensure that they conduct workshops and that the affected and interested parties and the are involved in the regulatory process. I think that's enough for now, and I can answer more questions later. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yvonne Shi. I am the Deputy Secretary for Environmental Justice and Equity at the California Environmental Protection Agency, and I started this job about 8 weeks ago. So very new. Some of you might be aware of the California Environmental Protection Agency. Some of you might think that it's actually the US Environmental Protection Agency, but also some of you might know about federalism, which is that in fact we have both the federal level and the state level, and I'm part of the state level Environmental Protection Agency. And this particular agency that I just joined, we do air protection work statewide for California. We do water protection, water quality work. In terms of agricultural land, there is a department under us that manages notifications for the application of pesticides in the agricultural fields. There is also a science arm that's part of the agency that helps us analyze and identify communities that are particularly subject to pollution and the disproportionate impacts of that pollution. So we have a lot in our portfolio for in terms of the environment, and my job as the environmental justice deputy is to be a liaison between the community and the agencies, between the community and the departments under us, and then also to communicate input from the communities that are vulnerable to pollution to the higher ups at the agency to make sure that that we're continuing to serve the public in the best way that we can. And then another aspect of my job is also to manage internal equity in this very big organization, because we understand that in order to do the job well in terms of serving the people of the state of California and reflecting the diversity of the state of California, we need to make sure that we do the internal groundwork, the internal structure to effectively manage and promote equity within our work. So I'll save the rest for questions.
Thank you, guys. This is very interesting. For our next question, what inspired you to pursue a career in environmental work? Was there a moment that sparked your passion? If we could have Joseph go first, then Enrique, then Yvonne.
Yeah, I'm happy to start off. So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and for me, my like journey to the environmental field began with just like growing up in a rural area in the mountains and uh just having those experiences in nature. I grew up in a small farming community. Like my grandfather was a farmer. We grew sugarcane, coffee, and so that was kind of my childhood experiences. Also, not too far from the beach, not too far from the rainforest. So I thought everyone had it that good, where I could just like be an hour from every possible like beautiful thing in the world. But also, what came with that beauty was also hurricanes, and that was a big part of my experiences as a kid. So like having both the beauty and the destruction as the two things that informed my path to the environmental field. And when I was in high school, so about like you guys' age, I was in New England. We had moved up to somewhere a lot colder than Puerto Rico, and I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I worked a bunch of jobs. I dug holes, farmed, sold things door to door, and just little by little, I got to realizing, I wanted that connection to the environment again, that thing that I had growing up, but I was moved away from it, and so I wanted to strive to get back to that. And so I went to college to study environmental studies. Got interested in research because someone took a chance on me and hired me in their lab to process samples. And I realized, well, I like this research thing. I like this teaching thing. Um, and I saw the impact that the mentors I had in the research and teaching had an effect on me. And that's where I said, well, I want to combine all those things professionally. And I said, how can I do that? And to me, that meant I wanted to become a professor. I wanted to do research that I thought mattered, that was connected to communities and space and environments. And I wanted to provide opportunities for students who didn't have them by building a lab, by engaging with students in the classroom, but also having students involved in the research, by having graduate students that I can help train them to go on and do their dreams. And so it's been quite a journey, and yeah, through all this. And now my work is all about first and foremost is about providing those connections, but then I get to ask really cool questions and then go out into the field and study environments and go to places all over the world to think about how disturbances and climate is affecting our environment, and with a focus on how trees react to environmental changes. And so I feel very fortunate to have kind of navigated my path to this. Yeah, I think that's enough. Maybe a long answer. Sorry about that.
Yeah, okay, it's yeah, I'll start this off. So for me, what inspired this career in environmental work is I've always been passionate about the environment and its surroundings, and how buildings nestle into the landscapes. Um, my interest in the design field started back when I was in 8th grade. I remember woodshop class where we had to design and build a CO2 cartridge propelled wood car, and there I was introduced to the drafting board, the T-square, and the triangle, and I really enjoyed drawing and then building that design that I created. This really piqued my interest in the design and to build things. So I decided to pursue a degree in architecture. I attended Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo and obtained a 5-year bachelor's degree in architecture. And having that degree has really helped me in my journey to developing sustainable codes for California. And at the Building Standards Commission, I had the code development technical writing team to develop sustainable codes that are used for construction of commercial and state and university buildings. Thank you.
I was born in China, and I spent a good part of my childhood in China, in a very industrial city in southern China. And I remember the sky wasn't blue where I grew up. The water was not clean where I grew up. And we would frequently walking to school every day, would cross these streams that are obviously full of, I think, garbage and chemicals that we would never jump in to swim in. And that was, growing up in that kind of environment, I just thought that that was the way things are and never questioned it. It wasn't until I had the opportunity to come to America, to California in particular, and realize that the world is a very different place depending on where I lived. And that really made an impression on me. I also had the privilege and opportunity to go to get a college degree in Southern California. And I think it's that really the stark difference in how the environment that I was born and raised in versus the environment that I was adopted into, that really drove my love for the natural world and wanting to study it. So I became a biology major early on, and wanted to just be outside all the time and study and do field research and ecology research. But at some point, I think during that research and during my studying, I realized the opposite of Joseph, which is that I didn't want to stay in academia. I wanted to somehow make more of a connection and impact and change the way things are, because of this realization that not everyone experiences the environment similarly. And I would love to see, my family and my community in China be able to see the things that I see in America in these places. And then also realizing that there are so many places in California where communities are experiencing the environment very differently and subject to different pollution and different health harms from that pollution. So I decided to become a lawyer. And so first I had to go to law school. So I did that. I got a law degree, then became a lawyer for 9 years. And that's what I was doing up until 8 weeks ago. And when I was a lawyer, I worked for some nonprofits that worked in environmental litigation and advocacy. And then I also worked for the California Department of Justice. I did a lot of, I filed lots of lawsuits and did lots of investigations that address kind of this gap in the experience of the environment. And I think, the term we use is environmental justice and also environmental equity, because of the way that the environment, the privileged and the disinvested communities experience the environment.
Thank you. I really appreciate and I really think it's admirable how you all had some sort of moment from growing up that way, you saw the difference, sparking that passion from something that you did, or kind of just recognizing the need in the world. So I think that's admirable. Thank you. For our next question, what are some challenges that you were facing when you started your career, and how did you overcome them at this point? And for our order, we'll have Enrique, Yvonne, and Joseph.
Yeah, thank you, Jojo. Yeah, so I am a Mexican immigrant. I was born in a small village in the state of Jalisco, Mexico. I came to the U.S. when I was 9 years old. So as a first-generation immigrant, English was and is my second language. So I had to overcome some learning obstacles. I had to learn proficient English. I had to study a lot to learn the technical words, technical writing, and design theories in college. The other obstacle is that while growing up, we had to work in the fields because my parents were seasonal farm workers. And sometimes throughout the year, depending on the season, they would take us out of school to go, for example, go to Northern California to go pick olives in this little town called Corning. It's north of Sacramento. And then we would also have to pick peaches in the summer, in July, super hot. And then June, we'd go up to Oregon and pick cherries in the Dalles, Oregon. So growing up, I really had to work diligently and focus, and just had to work a lot to get to where I am now. So it's a struggle, but it's been worth the journey. Thank you.
I think it's my turn. So I had some cultural and family resistance to the path that I chose. Culturally, and also just from a more traditional Chinese family, my community was like, you're a girl, you shouldn't be a lawyer, you shouldn't be so combative and or argumentative. Also, it's too stressful, like you can't handle it. My family is more like, yeah, it's too stressful. You should be staying home and raising a family by this age. So there's all sorts of like internal, like family community pressure from that aspect. And then there's also sort of the external, like because I was a first generation immigrant, because I have known lawyers in the family, like I don't know how the path works. I don't know like anything about how to go about on the career, like to do the career that I want. I just have this idea in my head. And so I got lots of bad advice, which is, oh, you shouldn't be an environmental lawyer because all environmental lawyers are bad. They are trying to destroy the environment. And so it's just, I don't know, I think maybe a combination of stubbornness and also just being lucky to stumble onto like good mentors. And then also just seeking out, like really following that kind of gut of, I know this is what I want to do. This type of like talking to people and advocating for things, that makes me feel fulfilled. And going with that gut instinct to try to get at really what like to chart my own course onto the path that of becoming a lawyer. Having good mentors along the way to both give me the good advice and see my passion for it, and then to push me along that path when it gets hard. And for me to sort of get that sense of it's hard because it is hard. It's not hard because I shouldn't be doing it. It's like finding that balance and identifying like people that give you that kind of validation and support and also who challenge you. It's good to find those people.
Yeah, I resonate a lot with what Yvonne said, especially like I used to just lie to my family and say I was an engineer. There would just like be less questions if I just told them that. So, but for me, one of the challenges really came to when I moved from Puerto Rico, I left behind a really big family. My mom's one of 21 kids, and all my family lived on the farm. I had over 100 cousins on just that side of my family, and I grew up with that community. Then I come up here to the US, feeling kind of alone, trying to figure out how, do I go to college? Didn't know where to apply to college because I also had no one in my family that had any experience with college or even any careers beyond, with like different careers. So I just applied to every school that sent me something in the mail. With no real experience, and I tried to go to my guidance counselor and she would just say, oh, you like environmental stuff. Let's just look at this book that says, oh, this school has an environmental major. Apply there. So I got really lucky though, because my school let me go to, like, if I wanted to go visit a college, I could skip school for the day. So maybe not with the best intention. I did a lot of college visits because I could just skip school, go to a college visit. But then if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have found I better understood what I wanted to do. But then going through that path, going to college, still not knowing what I want to do, um, I I realized like I missed having that community around. Like I never got to speak Spanish to in any setting unless I was interacting with service work or something like that, right? Uh, and so it was very lonely in that way. I of all the colleges like that I went throughout my training, there was 115 faculty and only one was Latina, and I met her like the last month of my grad school. So it was very lonely in that way. And that led me to actually do a lot of outreach and work with communities and try to engage a lot of the communities with the work that I did at universities and just bridging that gap. But one of the issues was that work was seen as not valuable, right? Like when you're a scientist, you got to do the science, and when you do outreach and science communication and work with communities, oftentimes like if you don't have the right mentors and people around you, that's seen as a waste of time, right? And so I was lucky I had good mentors, but it was always a thing I had to prove to people that, well, maybe it doesn't matter to you, but it matters to me, and I see that as part of my career, life, and goals in this. So so that was, those are some of the struggles and challenges. I think just trying to figure out how to find community and always building community and keeping that central to my motivation.
Thank you guys for sharing and being very open with us and being able to express yourselves. For a following question, can you share some of the successes and challenges you faced in your work and the key lessons you've learned from those experiences?
I think, did we already ask them?
I mean,
Yeah, our apologies. That's the one we already asked. The actual next question is, what advice would you give to younger people interested in following the same path as you? And for the order, we'll go with Yvonne.
Actually, hold on, Jojo. I think we're on question number 3.
Yeah, we're on question 3.
Oh, we are?
Yeah.
Oh,
You
that's
haven't asked that first question that you thought you asked.
my bad. You pick a order then.
All right. Yeah, we'll go with Yvonne, Joseph, and Enrique.
So we're going with the challenges question, right? Like, what are the challenges and the successes?
Yes.
Okay. So there are California. I've been working for the state for a while, and the job that I had before this was working for an agency called the California Department of Justice, which is a department under the state that does a lot of enforcement work, does a lot of like lawyering in terms of filing lawsuits. And so uh, the law is a very ancient thing in America. It is ancient because it's based on English law, which is like has its own just institutional kind of history. And the way that the law works in America is that if there is an example like a precedent, something a case happened back in the 1500s in England, and then the judges decided the law in a particular way, then that is the way in which that in future circumstances, when that event comes up in other people's lives, that's how the law then is usually decided. It's called like this precedential system of law, like case precedents and legal precedents. What this does, like, is that it creates a framework in which like what has always been done continues to be done, and it doesn't give wiggle room as much for change to happen, like the kind of change that I want to advocate for. And it creates a system in which people who already are disinvested in and are not well-resourced continue to not have the resource, and the privileged continues to be able to protect their privilege and wealth. So it's a system that persists in the lack of change. So I'm a lawyer. I was a lawyer for a long time in the system, and I was assigned to, and I interviewed for and like applied for and got into the Bureau of Environmental Justice, where I was tasked with using this tool that is like unchangeable to effectuate environmental justice, to level the playing field, and to be able to elevate the concerns and of the communities that are disproportionately experiencing this historical disinvestment, and thus this kind of historical contamination and health harms onto their communities. So lots of pushback. Like I think because institutionally, it's such a challenge to use a tool that by its definition wants to persist at the status quo. So, that was a huge challenge, and I think the way to overcome that is to have this kind of creative, like we need to write new laws in order to be able to enforce them in a way that accounts for that historical disinvestment in communities, like new tools that the legal like minds and lawyers could use to then say this is wrong. And so we need to just be able to get away from like that kind of historical precedence, because new laws would rise out of that history. So one thing that I did as part of the Department of Justice is to use one of those new laws that was written. California has many Native American tribes, and California is, on Native American land. Like it has many, like currently I am in Oakland, and so that is Ohlone land. And California has, to its credit, recently started to try to recognize that historical taking away of Native American land, and to try to, in its laws, adopt protective measures so that Native American communities can protect their cultural and historical tribal properties. So as part of our work, we were able to use some of that law, like the new legal framework, to enforce against and prevent the continued destruction of tribal historical properties. And that in itself, the using of a new law gets a lot of pushback in the lawyering world. But there were enough like-minded individuals at various levels of the decision-making for pushing these cases through that allowed the first successful case under that law to happen, and to allow for a tribal community's historical resources, cultural historical resources, to be protected. So that was a good success, and the law is slow working in the court, but I look forward to many more precedents that are formed in the years to come.
Well said. Is it my turn or is it Joseph's turn? I kind of lost track.
It's Joseph's turn.
Oh, Joseph's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, Enrique, I lost track too. So, honestly, it's going to be hard to follow that up, Yvonne. Anyways, that's fantastic. I think thinking really critically about these, how we reflect on the harms that we have done and keep doing to Indigenous communities and how we can right those wrongs is a really like constant battle, and I think in all sectors. And it's amazing to see that the state and people like you are in the state to work on this actively. So share some successes and challenges. I think I'm gonna talk about my time when I was a grad student, which was not too far from where you guys are now in at Stanford, and that's when I first got involved with Canopy. But that was the first time I'd been, kind of very far from home. Like I moved to New England when I was your age, but that was only a 4-hour plane ride from home, super easy to do. Then I moved to California, and I'm like, oh my God, where am I? Like a whole different world. I can't afford to get home if I wanted to because I didn't make enough money to buy my flight to get home to visit my family. And so I'm stuck in California, and one of the kind of things I was tasked to do is, well, okay, you're a grad student now. You have 5 years. Come up with your identity for the rest of your life. and that was scary. I spent a lot of that time during my PhD. So I was doing my PhD in environmental earth system science. Basically, just means that that I want to study the environment. And through that time, every project I started, I would fail, hit a wall, fail, and I kept thinking these failures, taking them really personally, not realizing that every single time I hit that wall, there was actually like a step of growth in there. And every project I did after that was actually built on those previous projects. And I think my advisors and mentors knew that and gave me that flexibility to like go out, do an experiment that was ridiculous and probably never would have worked, but I got that like ability. Then when I got my PhD, then I'm told, okay, now go apply for jobs. But when you apply for jobs, hide all the stuff you care about, like all the outreach and science communication. Don't talk about that because you're not going to get hired anywhere. Only talk about the science. And I had to say pretty straight up that I was like, well, I don't know if I want to work at those places that won't hire me if I have to hide who I am. But that's the reality for a lot of people in a lot of situations is we don't feel like we can bring our true identities to our work, to school, to whatever. So I was really I had what was a point of, I have to admit, like a point of I can't even think right now. It's 3 hours later here than where you guys are, so maybe I'm just slightly more tired. But it was like I don't know, let's skip that. Yeah, so I got to kind of bring my whole self to applications and got really lucky to get this job. And I don't know, I'll end there. Maybe I'll formulate a better thought for the next question. Go ahead, Enrique.
Hey, Joseph, yeah. So, yeah, some successes at work would be the creation of the mandatory Cal Green Code regulations. I came to the commission back in 2009 when the Cal Green Code was just a voluntary measure. It was not required for compliance with new commercial buildings or state buildings. Now, after 15 years, Cal Green is really seen as a model sustainable code around the country and actually around the world. And the lessons learned and being there for 15 years and having to go through these rulemaking process for code development, the lessons that I've really learned is when you're creating or writing a building code, you really need to get the people involved, everybody involved, that as part of the decision-making process, and you really try to get general consensus, and that's going to make for like a better building code, because you really need to talk to the folks that are going to be affected, the building owners, the industry folks, manufacturers, the general public, even the regulatory community, building officials and whatnot. So, in trying to develop code that's going to affect millions of people in California, and it's mandatory, you really need to get all of the what we call affected and interested parties at the table. So then when you actually go out for public comment, you're not going to get a lot of negative feedback, and hopefully by then you've worked out all the little little kinks in that code writing. So yeah, I would say consensus and lots of addressing everybody's concerns. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's really valuable how you go from like learning these key lessons, like such as like creating new laws. Thank you for the little lesson on law. I didn't know about that. And also to self-discovery and kind of like putting yourself in a position where you actually want to be. And also to involving the community, which is all really important. So thank you all. And for our next question, what advice would you give to people younger that are interested in following a same or similar career path as you? For our order, we'll have Joseph, Enrique, and Yvonne.
Yeah, I think I feel like I keep coming back to community a lot, but I think it's when you're in these fields, it can be really isolating. And so wherever you go, no matter what job, industry, anything, uh, you shouldn't discount what it means to you as a human to build and find that community. And it doesn't have to be a million people. It can be one person you resonate with, one person you can speak the language you spoke at home with while you're elsewhere. One person you can feel like you can be yourself with when you're in what feels like a very professional setting. So I think it's try to be authentic to who you are, what your values are. People will tell you you have to change often, but you should. I would say like just try to find your community in all of those spaces, and make that community for others when you can, and when you're at a point where that's possible. Yeah.
That's a good point, Joseph. Yeah. For me, I mean, the advice I'd give young people would be to follow your passion, never give up. If you follow your passion, then it's no longer a job, right? So for me, my passion is actually designing of. And prior to going to the Building Standards Commission, for more than 11 years, I was designing state-owned or leased buildings and a lot of forest fire station campuses and aquatic centers. And so my passion is design, but also when I went to the Building Standards Commission, I found that my passion was also writing regulations that will affect the built environment, and that has a more monumental effect than maybe perhaps just designing a building. So that's also my passion, and I will say that don't always look for the money, but it helps to pursue a field that they may have those opportunities for a good pay. I think the state of California has sustainability careers that might fulfill that. And sustainability careers have changed a lot throughout the recent years, at least since I've been there. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities, which I think will continue to grow. And then lastly, honestly, if I can do it, I know you can. So just believe in yourselves and don't give up. Pursue your passion.
If you're going to pursue a career in advocacy, it's important to remember that, advocating for something, like the need to advocate for something means that that thing doesn't exist yet. And that means that you are going into uncharted territory. And that means there's going to be full of uncertainties. But also remember that it's full of opportunity. You don't know what's going to happen. And it is scary and exciting. And you have to try lots of things. And going back to something that Joseph said earlier, it's like there's value in trying and failing because you learn better that way. And you lay the groundwork to have successes later. So don't be discouraged when something is hard. It's a cliche, but it's those things that are worth doing. I think one of my biggest successes actually came out of one of my biggest losses in a case. It was a case In the federal courts, the Ninth Circuit, United States has many different circuit courts of appeal. It was an airport expansion project in Southern California. The airport expansion was going to happen, is happening next to a disinvested community. And we tried to prevent that expansion from happening because it was going to cause more pollution, but we failed. We lost a case. And we lost a case because, we get 3 judges on the panel, and 2 of them are judges that really personally want more development and see more of that. And there's no escaping sort of the biases of that in the world. So we rolled the dice really with this case and we lost. But when you have an opinion in the court at that level, you get both a actual opinion, which controls what's going to happen, which means that the airport gets to expand. And if a judge on that panel disagrees, they get a dissenting opinion. And the dissenting opinion, in that case we lost, from a judge that agreed with me, is the most fiery, precedent-setting opinion that I have ever read on environmental justice, because she explicitly calls out environmental racism. I think it was the first time that environmental racism has ever been used in a legal opinion in United States. So now that language in the dissent is preserved for future to cite to, and maybe it could build a foundation for better law.
Yeah, thank you for your valuable insight and advice. I could see how all this information is very valuable for us, and
especially towards Canopy, like community and advocating for others is like a really big part of our organization. And honestly, we really couldn't do the work that we do without basically what you guys have just described. And I think it's admirable that in all of your work, it's very, very present that it's there. So thank you.
For our final question before the Q&A, how do you feel your work impacts the community or the world? Can you share an example or favorite memory of how your organization's work has made a difference?
I'm sorry, Miguel, is there question number 5, or is that part of number 5?
That's a part of question number 5.
And if you need us to repeat it, no worries.
Yeah. Could we go with Enrique, Joseph, and Yvonne?
Okay, so this is my work impact on the community. I would say, as a team lead, I've been an integral part of developing the CalGreen Code, which is the first in the nation sustainable code. For the past 15 years, I've helped develop sustainable codes that new commercial buildings need to follow when designing and building those structures. Our code helps save energy, potable water, creates healthier buildings for people to live and work in. Also, our code requires the installation of electric vehicle charging in new commercial and some existing buildings, which help reduce CO2 emissions, which creates a cleaner environment. My favorite memory is a recent one. This year I received the Pioneer Award from a reputable sustainability organization for my 15-year involvement in the sustainability code development. I'm really proud of this award, which I share proudly with my fellow commission staff members. Thank you so much.
Cool, yeah. So how do I feel my work impacts the community of the world? So as a professor, I basically have, I'll say, 2 main jobs. The university would like me to say my 3rd job is to bring them money, but the 2 jobs I care about are doing research and teaching. And the teaching is not just educating students, but also interacting communities, educating the public. and spreading and communicating that science. So as a researcher, I think my work is really important to me because what I care about is understanding how our ecosystems are being affected by changing climates, disturbances, what's going to happen into the future at a global and a regional scale. So I get to do a lot of work with scientists all over the world to investigate these things and try to find new findings that at least I think are making a difference in our understanding of what's happening, even if just incremental. And then from the education side, for me, it's all about, lifting as many people along with me as I can. I love involving students in my research. I always try to take on new students to my projects, give them experience in research, and just broaden those scopes. So I see that as some of the impacts for the community, in addition to the science communication outreach and things like that. An example that really, I think was really formative for me was back when I was in California. I always wondered, walking around Stanford, I'm like, well, why don't I hear Spanish? Why are there communities all around Stanford that haven't even been here? And it feels like there's just like magic wall that like people don't cross around the campus. I felt like I was at this country club with a bunch of school buildings and there was no connection to anywhere around me. So I said, well, I don't know. I'm just gonna reach out to a school in San Jose and see if they would be interested in coming on a Saturday, and I'll do a tour in Spanish. I was like, no one's gonna show up, but at least I tried. And then a busload of I think 150 people in like strollers, wheelchairs, everything showed up. I was like, oh, just no one asked. Like that's all they needed. Like they needed the bridge. They needed to make it accessible. They needed to be asked. And it seems so minor. And also I was like embarrassed to be at also at an institution that just never asked, never built those bridges. And so I saw that as part of my role. And I think it helped me think about how I continue keeping those connections no matter where I go.
That's hard to follow up. And I have the honor of giving the last answer, I think, on this. So I think one of the benefits of working in like policy and making creative like new rules and laws is being able to like pretty quickly see the impacts of it on the people. So, as I talked earlier, my agency does a lot of air regulations, and part of that work to regulate the air, the cleanliness of the air that we breathe is to incentivize the purchase of clean or zero emission vehicles, making sure that, the polluting fuels aren't as used on these highways and roads and by trucks that are surrounding communities and going to these communities. So part of that regulation is to make sure that the communities that are disproportionately affected by air pollution have access to both those vehicles, like being able to purchase those vehicles, and to be able to charge them electric and like have the electric infrastructure to be able to charge them. So it's like a multi-pronged approach, but the agency is pretty awesome in that it was able to do a lot of that like strategic, like multi-pronged problem solving to make sure that the community that otherwise wouldn't have the investment and the money to have that kind of electric infrastructure installed has the charging stations. And also that the community members are getting incentives in the form of subsidies and rebates to purchase electric vehicles and then charge them. So I actually was in one of the one of those communities that was recently invested in by some of those subsidies that my agency did, and talked to several people who were able to buy brand new hybrid or electric vehicles under such a subsidy, and they were very proud of their new car, which gives them a lot of mobility. And I think it's good to be able to see changes happening so immediately, and to and have that kind of impact.
Yeah, thank you all so much. That was a really great closing question. I really like how, like you all express some sort of like bridging that gap, and especially to how it affects community. Because, I think it's really important that when you when you like affect your community in a positive way, it can even lead to affecting the world in an even more positive way. So that does conclude our main questions, and I'd like to open it up to our audience for anyone who has questions for any of our panelists. You can say it in the chat and we can answer for you, or you can go off mute. We do have a question. What did you guys major in college? And Yvonne says biology and political sciences. And Enrique and Joseph, would you like to answer?
Yeah, mine was a degree in architecture from Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo.
Yeah, I did environmental studies for when I was in undergrad.
Yeah, so
I'll just jump on here. Our teen urban foresters, we did brainstorm a lot of questions, so let's take the time to ask them now.
So we had a question saying, how is it like finding a stable job in what you're passionate about, and were there any difficulties in finding one? That's all. Finding stable.
I'll take a stab at this one. So for me, my journey with state service, which I've been next April will be 28 years. So kind of an old guy here. But I actually started working at the state as a student while I was taking an art class. I had graduated from Cal Poly. The economy was bad. I ended up taking an arts class at the city college to qualify as a student, and I was hired on as a student, and then eventually became a full-time employee. So it was initially it was tough, but you have to be persistent, and yeah, persistence pays off. Thank you.
Thank you, Enrique. So just to be mindful of time, we are kind of approaching the end.
I just want to add something real quick on
Yeah.
that, on the job front. I think it's a good question. It is tough. The first job out of college, or like for me, law school, was really tough to find. It was like, how do you prove to somebody that you're interviewing with that you can do something when you've never done it? School is just not the same. So I actually would say, try to use various summers and opportunities in school to intern at like particular places that you think that you might want to work for, or places that have, the category of work that you want to do, and to form those networking opportunities and like form those relationships and ask questions and develop mentors. Because I have found my internship opportunities very like convincing to me, and to prove to myself that that's something that I wanted to do. I found internships with various nonprofits in the legal field like the most rewarding for me. Not schooling, not like, taking tests and like thinking about theories of law, but the actual practice of law. So take the opportunity to explore and try things, because as an internship, you have the best, you could benefit a lot from knowing that you like it, and then also have those like opportunities and connections. But if you didn't like it, then it's just an internship and you tried it. So then you have that data point.
Yeah, thank you. Not sure if we have more time for any more questions, but Joseph, would you like to answer?
I'll just go very briefly. All that advice was great. I think the part about making stable income is really important. So before I went to grad school, every job I had was hourly. I never had a stable income. I had to pay my way through undergrad. Then I show up at grad school, and what most people don't know is when you're doing a PhD, you're often paid a salary to be like you're a researcher, you're a student for that time. And that was my first time I had health insurance. I had a stable income. I thought I had it set, and then all the people around me are complaining, oh my God, we're not getting paid enough, which a lot of grad students don't get paid enough. But I think they also took for granted the fact that like how big of a deal that was for me to like have health insurance, have a stable income, and get to be a student and get paid to be one. Like it was really cool. And I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, I don't know. But I think if you want to go do research, be a PhD, you can probably get paid to do it. So if that interests you, great. But before that, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I did environmental studies because I had no clue what it was. I saw that second question, so I figured I'd throw that in there. And I did a million jobs, and it wasn't until I got to piece out, through internships and the things I liked, the things I didn't like, what I wanted to do moving forward. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We are at time, and I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. Yvonne, Enrique, and Joseph, thank you again for taking the time and coming in and speaking with us. We had a lot of first-generation BIPOC students on the call, and I know all of your personal stories definitely made an impact. And on behalf of Canopy, I want to thank y'all again. I would say that I would share your emails with all of y'all, but I know some of you have reps helping you. But if they have any questions, would it be okay if I send them over in our thread?
Okay. Absolutely. Sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Juanita, you can also reach out to me directly, and you have my email. So if you have any questions regarding any of these things, I would love to, be able to respond to any follow-up questions that anybody has.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you and your staff and Young. It's a pleasure to see young folks being interested in in the environment and the sustainability field. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you again. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and we'll be back same time next Wednesday for part 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks again.